If you want to go to Petite Forte, they told me, go to Bain Harbour on the Burin Peninsula and see Billy Sr. He'll take you there. And sure enough, he did. On a dark and dismal day in June, we steamed out of Bain Harbour and made our way along the west coast of Placentia Bay. It's not the first time Billy Sr. has been in these waters. In fact, he's a bit of a legend on this shore, and everyone around here knows his vessel, the 80 and Sarah. I'd never been in these waters before, never seen Petite Forte or Burin or St. Joseph's, or the many other places that I'd heard of so many times. I knew, of course, that many were now deserted. Some had died naturally, others expired prematurely through centralization. It's scarcely a soft and easy shore, especially out around Cape Roger Head, where the wind funnels in on the rugged cliffs. Bill pointed out the different places to me. He put names on the headlands and the coves. He showed me where the people used to live. It's a long, lonely, empty coast these days. Not like years ago when every cove had its livyers and when all men fished. Billy Sr. was a fisherman himself here for a long while, and a good one too, they tell me. He once had a trap berth near here. It's not the first time he's entered Petite Forte. Petite Forte, it's survived. The new homes of those who've come back. The old homes of those who've stayed. It's a long, deep, sheltered harbor. Men have fished here for a long, long time, since the days when the French controlled this bay, I suppose. There are no roads, no cars in Petite Forte. It's 2 hours by boat to the nearest highway. This is one of the few really isolated communities left on the island, where the coastal boat doesn't even come here anymore. It was replaced, after much fuss, by a smaller ferry. Petite Forte. An artist would have a great time here, and so would a poet. But words and pictures are not quite enough, not in a place like Petite Forte. Men came here to fish, and fish they must if they are to survive. Some of the boats were in, some were still out on the fishing grounds. We waited, and the gulls waited too. Eugene Jones, fisherman. Oh, like many others of his generation, he's worked away from home, but Petite Forte kept drawing him back, and now he's here to stay. A wife, a home, a family, and a love of the water. Who could ask for anything more? Well, he could ask for a few more lobsters, I suppose. They're scarce this morning. But that's to be expected at this time of year. Many fishermen have their pots out of the water already. It's that in-between time. The lobsters are practically gone and the codfish have not yet struck in. The fishermen blame the capelin. They're late arriving again. But such is life for a fisherman. He learns to be patient. I was curious about Petite Forte. How has it survived while other places have died? I learned later from Eugene that Petite Forte nearly died too.
it was almost gone, you know. We got down to 17 households there in 68 sometime or so, somewhere thereabouts. And a few years went by, it didn't look very good. No young people were around here, nobody stayed, and everybody's place was getting a bit shabby. Nobody bothered to fix anything because they figured next year we'll be gone too. But right now it's on the up again, and we're doing pretty good. It's back to 30 households, or 31 right now all year. And in summer months there's a few summer families comes back to spend the summer.
I hear there are quite a few, there's going to be quite a few babies born here this year.
Yes, it's supposed to be 8 when they all turns up.
So that's a good sign for the future of Petite Forte.
Yes, it's going up, and we hope it keeps going up. If it keeps going, we'll be well ahead in the next 10 years.
Petite Forte, morning. A thick mist hangs on the harbour, the bay. Good fishing weather. Did I say mist? It was a fog of the Placentia Bay variety, the thickest kind. We went out anyway to see what we could see. Luckily, it soon began to lift, and we could follow the coast and spot the boats out fishing. We cruised around Marticut Island, then on down to Great Paradise and Little Paradise, and the wicked line of rocks that made me glad the fog had lifted. Quite a few of the small boats were out jigging, and they were doing pretty good, as Jean had told me.
Yeah, well, right now, up until the fish get blooded with the capelin, you know, it's good for jigging. About 15th of May around here, you can go out and get a fair fish with the jigger just about any time. But after the capelin get in and the fish get blooded, well, it's game over for the jigger then.
So you figure this is about the end of it for the jigger then? There's quite a few out there today on jigger, but this might be the tail end of that season.
Yeah, well, it could go for another week or so yet. Off on the ground where there's not much capelin, well, it may go on for 2 weeks, or when the capelins start to go off from the shore, then.
What are you doing with it, sir? You getting a good many?
Yeah, it's got one here. We got 400 pounds.
It seemed to us like there was a fair amount of fish for a jigger.
There was. This was a good day. Everybody brought in a nice few fish today. I think they must have got close to 30,000 pounds down there.
So what would a small boat now get in a good day with the jigger?
Well, if you're talking about one fella, he could get to 1,000 or 1,200 pounds, or maybe a little better than that, you know.
So there's a good day's pay out in boat, no matter which way you fish right now.
Oh God, yes. If you can get a half decent day now and stay out all day, you'll have a good dollar in the evening when you get back.
We went on. I hoped we'd meet Eugene and his brothers so we could watch them haul one of their traps. We searched about. There's a lot of fishing grounds over here, lots of room for the small boats. Once, when Paradise and the other places were alive and well, these grounds must have been crowded. Not so now. There's lots of room. We found the Jones boys on their way to their second trap, and we followed them. out around the island they call Marticot, past the lighthouse and on into the back cove.
Well, we got one down Burin. We had that down there since early May. And we got one out to Back Cove Marticot, where you were today.
Were you surprised this morning at Marticot to see all those fish?
Oh yeah, we did better in the other trap down Burin, where we get the fish pretty well all the time, but we did better than expected out there because there wasn't any sign of capelin out there today anyway.
I notice now you've got a big crew with you. Are you all related?
5 of us, 5 brothers, yeah.
Is it a good way to have it?
Well, I suppose we've been together this last 7 or 8 years now. 4 of us have been together a long while, and the other brother came home the last 3 years and went with us. So we've been doing all right.
You share everything together, or do you have your own fisheries too? Just get together for the trap fishing?
Trap season, yeah. 5 of us together for trap season, and then we split off. 3 go together on the gillnet fishery or trawl, whatever, and I go on my own boat. The other brother, sometimes they go fishing and sometimes they go look for a bit of work if we can find some.
So what will you do now once the trap fishery is over?
Oh, I'll go back in my own smaller boat then, back on the trawl again. Trawl and jigger mostly.
Now it's mostly pollock you get down to Marticot now, isn't it?
Yeah, we got about 3,000 pounds of pollock there today.
Is this to be expected or not?
Well, we were getting some pollock all along. We sold 36,000 pounds before today, and we must have dumped, well, 40,000 pounds or more for sure before they started buying them down there.
Tell me about the pollock. What kind of a fish is it?
Oh, it looks much like a trout now when it's small, you know. It's only about 17 or 18 inches right now. Last year they were 13 or 14. It has to be 16 inches to be big enough to sell, but seems like they're growing pretty fast.
It's a silvery, dark fish, isn't it?
On the outside, yeah, it's pretty much the same color as a trout. Has a different scaling, but there's blue on the back and silvery bottom. Well, we get 10 cents a pound, but that's all right now, you know. Awful lot better than dumping them.
Tell me about how long a day you punch in now this time of year with the trap fishery.
Well, there's no sweat to use up at least 18 hours, you know. If you're talking about all day, you leave home, well, around 4:30. And then, if you're going to fish all day, get all your traps out and go back to second haul in the evening. You're going to be out till dark, 8 or 9 o'clock, or some nights a bit later.
So there's not much slack time at this time of year down in Petite Forte?
No, none at all. None at all if you're going to keep going and earn a half-decent dollar.
Most of the Petite Forte boats are small. There didn't seem to be the desire to go for the bigger, more expensive longliners that fishermen in many places seem to want. I asked Jean about this.
Boy, I tell you, if you get one of those big longliners, you're not going to have too many dollars for yourself because it's all going to go out in expenses. With the small boat, if you go out and get a kentle or two of fish, you know, when you come in, well, you own about 4/5 of the kentle. But with the large boat, you're not going to own very much when you come in, I tell you.
Now you fish for just about everything, don't you?
Well, got a license for a lobster and cod and, well, other ground fish, you know. Well, it's not very easy for the young fellow coming out of school, so he can't get any license. That's the big problem with the fishery now. He got to go on. There's no license for him, unless his father or brother or someone decides to give it up and turn it over to him. That's the only chance he got to get the license, and that makes it hard for you, you know.
Well, is there enough grounds out there, enough fish out there for everybody if the fishery did expand like that?
Oh yes, there's lots of grounds. When all those communities were full of people and full of fishermen, there was 10 times as much fishermen out there as there are out there now. And everybody was getting a living then just the same.
Now they say you can fish pretty well all year round on the south coast. I suppose that depends on where you are and the size of boat you've got though. You don't fish all year round.
No, but you can't do very much fishing here in winter time, I tell you now. You may get out one day out of a week or 2 weeks if you're really watching the weather, like, you know. But then when the collecting service is over, everything's shut down. The bait unit is closed down and there's no bait, you know.
But you still get a fairly long season out of it though.
Oh yeah, it goes on from, well, early April up until November. When the weather gets really bad in November and you're forced to stay in, that's it then.
So you can make a pretty good living here, certainly as good as you can by working away these days, I suppose.
Well, everybody seems to be doing okay. Everybody owns what they got around here, and everybody seems to have $1 to spend when they want it, so I guess you couldn't ask for any better.
You haven't got many cars here, have you?
No, the cars are scarce, but there's, I think, 21 skidoos here in the community.
Do you miss cars and roads and being isolated down here a bit? Do you feel that?
No, not at all. When you weren't born and didn't live with a road don't mean all that to you. We got our road there, everybody got their own boat, and it seems like that's just as good to us. You go where you want to go. There was never anybody died in Petite Forte because they couldn't get out. There was always a way out. Not that I know of, anyway.
So your highway is still the ocean?
Right, yeah. Sometimes it's a bit bumpy, but we get there just the same.
Mr. Michael Walsh, 87 years old, the patriarch of Petite Forte. You're apt to see him anywhere. Walking the path around the harbour, painting his house, yes, even tarring his roof. Mr. Mick, loved and respected by all. He's interested in everything and everybody. He's a self-taught man, an avid reader. He's been a fisherman on the Grand Banks. He's been a soldier on the battlefields of France. He's a man with memories. A man who's interested in preserving the stories and memories of the old people and the old places, but especially Little Bonnet, the spot where he was born.
Do you ever go out there now?
I was out there last year, but it's all grew over now, trouble. All go over. All my people is buried out here in Big Parish, the cemetery. I keep them all in order. I go out and I all of it stones, all stand straight and tall. I does that for here, the father and mother, my grandfather and my granddaughter. Yeah.
Straight and tall. He keeps the tombstones straight and tall. A proud gentleman. Mr. Mick knows his roots. He knows how strong and tough the old people had to be to survive. He knows their hardships, their triumphs, their tragedies. He's old enough to remember. And he wants others to know too. That's why he's carefully written down all he knows about his ancestral home.
Dear reader, yesterday I paid a visit at Little Burin, my birthplace, that is 7 miles from here in Peninsula Bay. I had not been there for a good many years. The place is growing over quite a bit. There is no one living there now, but it's still the place I love best of all.
There's not much left today in Little Bonnet to show that 6 generations lived there. The soil, the weeds are beginning to cover the traces of the few families who call this place home. And only Mr. Walsh remembers the story of the first settler to come to Little Bonnet, his great-great-grandfather, Patrick Dre.
There's a story told of Patrick Dre as a young man home in Ireland, making friends with a young Englishman who was there as a soldier in the army, then occupying Ireland. Those were troublesome times when an Irishman's life wasn't worth 5 cents. This man's name was Hunt, and they became great friends. One night a man was murdered and Dre was arrested for the crime. It looked bad for him and it appeared as if he would be executed. But Hunt stepped forward and swore rangers in his company when the man was killed and proved what he was saying was true, and Dre got scot-free. A few years after that, Hunt followed Dre to Newfoundland.
A long time ago, a sea voyage across the ocean to Newfoundland. An Irishman looking for a new life. He made his way to Peninsula Bay and found this cove, tiny, isolated, hidden almost. It had a name on the chart even then, Little Bonet, but no one lived there. He built a home. And so Patrick Dre, the Irishman, became Patrick Dre, Newfoundlander. A new life in a new land. He married a girl from Burin. The children came, and Little Bonet was established. Time passed, memories faded. But not the story of Patrick Dre, the first settler, at least not in the mind of young Michael Walsh. This was an interesting yarn he'd heard as a child about the near execution of his great-great-grandfather. For a long while he didn't think it was true, till one day when he came in from the Grand Banks.
When I was in the fishing school years ago, we called up here to St. Joseph looking for squid baiting. And we were there early after dinner, and I rowed ashore to wharf, and on the wharf was an old man sitting now. And I introduced myself and told him where I was and where I come from. And I was an old man, a big white whisker. And I said, "Sir, were you ever in Little Bonet?" "Yes, boy," he said, "there are dozens of times." He said, "Yes, he said, 'twas my grandfather, Safe Patrick, been hung home in Ireland," he said. Well, sure, Lord, that's what he said, but I didn't believe it too much out home when they were talking about it. But that's it now.
And so, on that wharf in St. Joseph's a long time ago, a young fisherman named Michael Walsh met an old fisherman named Thomas Hunt. And they both knew the old story was true. Today, the descendants of these two settlers live and fish side by side in Peninsula Bay. Their lives a little bit richer, perhaps, by the stories and the memories that this man has written down. Mr. Mick, he's still there, wandering about Petite Forte, with a smile on his face, a twinkle in his eye, and a song in his heart for the times and the people he knew.
To me, our old place in Little Bonet is consecrated ground. Consecrated with the work, sweat and toil of my ancestors. I herald quote from the English poet Tennyson. The stately ship sails on to our heaven under the hill, but oh, for the clasp of a vanished hand and the sound of a voice that is still. My remembrance of Little Bonet is, and always have been, a remembrance of deep affection for the good, gentle people that live there.